everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Comic Corner. Today, I am your host, TJ, aka Fat Thor, and it is so good to see you all. Today, I am joined by two very special guests. You may know them as the writers of such titles as Captain America, Guardians of the Galaxy, Batman Beyond, Star Trek, so many other titles. And today, we are here to talk about some of their most recent work, which is Principles of Necromancy, Outsiders from DC, NYX, and also Spider-Man. I welcome to the show Jackson, Lanzing, and Collin Kelly. Guys, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, man. We're great.
Doing great. Happy to be here.
And I'm happy to have you guys here. If anyone is watching and listening and may know me from my other channel, Sons of Milner, you can go check out some other interviews that we have from Jackson and Collin, going all in on their history, their collaboration, and deep dives into all their other titles. But today, again, we're here to talk about some of your most recent work. And I want to start this off with Principles of Necromancy, one of my favorite books. Anyone who tunes into our weekly show knows that it's been one of my favorite books going on recently. And this just wrapped up. Fortunately, just its first arc. We can look forward to some more in the future. But I wanted to start off by asking you guys, we talked last time about how with this story, you guys really wanted to try and push yourselves in the way that you tell stories and kind of experiment on different ways of storytelling. So now that we finished this first arc, I want to ask, how do you guys feel that you've done that with this first arc, and maybe some of the things that you've learned about, different ways to tell stories, again, now that this first arc is finished up?
I mean, we're going to pat ourselves on the back and say that we did a dang great job.
Agreed.
There's a total joy in doing a creator-owned book where you can really just free yourself to say yes to the weirdest ideas possible, and to be really innovative in how you tell a story. I don't think there's a lot of other publishers who would get behind the idea of a protagonist where you never really see within their perspective, where they are effectively alien within their own book. But with this book, we were able to really dive into that. And for those folks who don't know, Principles of Necromancy is a story about a world without any magic where doctors are considered wizards. And we are the ones following the youngest of all the physicians, Dr. Jacob Eyes, as he is setting out not just to cure sickness, but to cure death itself. It's a book, I'm sure you can Google it and look at some of the art. It's got beautiful gore. It puts the gore in gorgeous. But that is never the point. The point is the horror of man and what we are willing to do to ourselves to extend and look into the future.
I think to sort of get to the meat of your question on how form and function sort of became the challenge and the kind of exploration of that book, it really comes down to, as Collin said, the protagonist being alien. And what we want to do, and we don't mean that, literally, obviously, what we mean by that is that his perspective is removed from the audience. We're asking the audience to look behind his eyes, which have quite literally been replaced with lenses, and asking them to see, okay, who is this guy behind here? Is he a monster? Is he a student? Is he a optimist? Is he a pessimist? Is he a hero? Is he a villain? What is this guy? And you're only going to know him by his works. And so each issue of Principles is designed to take a different perspective on him, quite literally by centering a different character. Issue 1 finds him encountering a sort of Conan-style barbarian character named Cairn, who becomes his test subject. And so as a result, you get one glimpse of him. But issue 2, you're going to meet him through a completely different vibe, through a young woman who becomes his nurse, effectively. And what's that vibe? How does that create a different kind of relationship and thus a different view on him? And so each issue gets to do that over the course of the first 4 until I think by the end of 4, we've unpacked about as much as we can on this guy before you as the audience are sort of going to have to make a call. And I think by the time that you get to the last page of Principles of Necromancy, of Volume 1, I think you're going to see, I'm pretty sure audiences can understand, like readers get what's going on with him in their own way. Is that going to be exactly what we believe? Probably not. And that's for the best. That's what the book is designed to do, to be a sort of Rorschach test where you get to project aspects of yourself onto this and better understand this character. And thus, ideally, understand yourself a little bit better, right? Because what is literature but a frame for us to recognize ourselves? So I think that was a really exciting story mode for us to dive into, because it meant that where our character-centric stories, especially in superhero books, which tend to be all about unpacking that lead, shoving you really hard into their perspective, and then really understanding the world through the character, right? That's how we approach all those books that you mentioned, are all approached that way. This book is approached the other way. And it was interesting to learn the excitement of that, and sort of see how cool that could be, but also see the limitations of it. I think there's a genuine limitation to it, because it creates a process by which at some point or another you have to tip your hand to the audience. At a certain point, you can't keep saying, "Ooh, do you know who he is?" Like, at some point you've seen enough, and now you get to know who he is. And at that point, then the book is going to have to change modalities to better understand what it can be now that you understand him, right? And that, without going into any kind of detail on stuff that isn't announced or fully, like in progress yet, though this is the sort of principle behind Volume 2, is that now that we've gotten you around this character's perspective, now we're going to let you in. And in letting you in, ideally, you will have a totally new experience in this world, because you have now a more direct and honest connection with the lead character. So we're really excited to see what that does. Ultimately, the book is a showcase for Eamon Winkle, right? Our artist.
Yes, fantastic.
Our partner on it. He's the reason this book is what it is, and it's why we continue to do it, because it's a joy to watch him develop and become. I think he's going to be a superstar. Watching him develop into that is a genuine joy. And so, yeah, we're really excited to see what the book becomes as he continues to grow, and as we continue to grow, and as Eyes continues to grow. I think the only thing that's important about Principles is that we're always putting ourselves in a little bit of an uncomfortable position, that we're always making ourselves push past our instincts and into something more, I don't know, dig deeper and try to find something that wouldn't come out of any of us individually, which is always, the point of the hive mind.
Well, I think you guys absolutely nailed it. The end with Jacob Eyes, I think, like you said, it perfectly wraps up the story, this first arc, but also leaves us with tons of more questions to explore. So everyone, if you haven't picked up Principles of Necromancy, be sure to go out and pick it up. You can go back, watch some of our episodes, and hear me gush about this series. But before we move on, I got to ask, so we know that part 2 is coming. Hopefully a trade's going to be coming of that as well. What can you tell us about part 2? And I'm expecting part 2 is going to also kind of change perspectives, but are we going to be mainly following Jacob Eyes in this part 2, or are we going to be, dipping deeper into some of the other characters in this world?
Hate to be that guy, but information zero on Principles 2.
I had to ask.
I appreciate that. It is too early for us to start hyping any of it. Mostly because we want that to be a discovery for readers who are encountering it either for the first time, because you can come into Volume 2 fresh or not. And I think we're really looking to make it its own experience alongside Magma to build that out. In the meantime, though, you did mention the trade, and I think that's a really important point to make, which is trade's on its way. It's going to be a beautiful trade. There's actually some other plans for collections that I think people are going to discover later next year that I'm excited about as well. There's some really exciting sort of moves that Magma is making around Principles, which obviously was their launch title, and which they've been incredibly supportive of. And we're just really excited to have like such supportive partners for an independent book, because we're not selling like Invincible numbers. It's a little book.
But you can go to your LCS right now and you can tell them we want the Principles trade. It is in FOC right now, and I think you all know out there. I think it's
not even in previews yet.
I mean, it's going to be there soon. You can tell your LCS, and they're going to be able to pull it aside for you. If it's not out now, it's going to be announced real soon. And then, you'll be able to pick it up.
Well, don't worry, everybody, because I will be for sure talking about it until that is announced and it all comes out. So if you watch this show, you will be up to date. I'll also be throwing links in the description for all of that. And we got to talk about Outsiders, one of my favorite books. I've been reading a lot more DC these days, but this is my absolute favorite. Again, I've gushed about this on the show plenty of times, and we have just hit our penultimate issue, coming up to the last issue next week. And so as we lead up to this issue, in this last one, you guys basically break the DC universe, something that you guys aren't really strangers to. We saw you guys kind of did a similar thing in Guardians. So I wanted to ask, what kind of goes into breaking a universe? I mean, especially something like DC. Like we talked one of our last conversations about DC being very fruitful place for storytelling right now, and it seems like you guys have definitely been let loose on this title. So again, what is the process of breaking the universe and then having to put it back together? I mean, if it comes back together, who knows, right?
Well, I mean, I think part of that is luckily out of our hands, because the actual breaking and putting back together of the universe on the larger scale of the DC universe is happening right now in Absolute Power, as I think everybody's sort of aware, with the Absolute line coming down the pike and DC All In and all of that, which we can't wait to read as fans. We are in no way involved with DC after Outsiders 11. It is our last book at DC for the time period, for the time being. We're sort of saying everything we had to say about Outsiders or about DC through Outsiders, and I think we're going to take some time away from the universe and experience it as fans. That said, I think the thing that is, in terms of like what it goes into, as you say, like breaking a universe, we really didn't think about it like that. We really thought about it like, as we said, we approach everything through character. What did the characters need? What were the characters' objectives? How were they going to get to a place? What was going to bring out the feelings that we were looking to express? And truthfully, Outsiders is a book about books. It is a book. It is as metafictional as our work has ever gotten. It is where we put our Grant Morrison and Warren Ellis influences right on our sleeve, and really try to talk about how stories affect us. How as storytellers we hope the work is received, but also how as storytellers we are part of a longer continuity of story, and how even when you're not a storyteller, especially when you're not a storyteller, how stories are important and why they're important, and how maybe sometimes the storyteller gets in the way of that importance, right? Like Outsiders is a book about stories, much like the book that inspired it, Planetary. So in building what is effectively a direct sequel to Planetary, which we kept very secret for the first 6 issues, and then obviously sort of started to wear on our sleeves as well. As we built that out, we always had the ending in mind that our lead character from that book, which, spoiler alert, if you haven't read Outsiders right now is a great time to stop listening.
Plug your ears. Your ears.
And go read all of Planetary. And then read Outsiders 1 through 10, and then return to this conversation. Ready? Back? Man, wasn't Planetary great? Good job, guys.
Oh, so good, dude. So good.
So Outsiders 10 finds Chiquita Wagner, one of the original members of Planetary, a book that was all about preserving a weird world that needed to stay that way. Deciding that she is going to bring her universe back, and that it doesn't matter if it's going to consume everything else that ever was. She doesn't care. Her job wasn't to keep that multiverse working. Her universe was to keep her strange world strange. And it's been lost. It's been written out of continuity. It's been kept out. It's a lot of decisions, quote unquote, up the fiction stack, as Morrison might put it, have caused her to be in a position where she has to do this. So it was really just a matter of, this was a thing that Chiquita needed to do. And then we had to put together a system throughout all of Outsiders. And we've known that this was the ending since the very beginning. Outsiders has always been designed initially as a 12 issue and now as an 11 issue arc. Scheduling things with Absolute Power and all that just kind of forced us to truncate at the end a little bit, but it worked out fine.
But I mean, I also think, like, to your point, like, you're blaming us for destroying the universe. No, my friend. DC has been destroying its own universe over and over and over again in a need to give us new number ones, right? Every continuity reboot, every crisis is them destroying their universe. All we did was point it out, right? That's just Jaquita being like, I'm not the bad guy here. You guys are the ones who keep tossing the baby out with the bathwater and pretending it never happened. You're at fault. And right now, whether you agree with us or you agree with Jaquita, right, or you, right, who you agree with is going to be up to the fans, but also that's the entire point, right? The outsiders themselves, Luke Fox, Kate Kane, and Lucius Fox, they're able to look at her and say, like, yeah, but dude, we are products of that universe, so what is more valuable? Like, your opinion or mine? Where does justice live? And I think that's where the really interesting kind of taste from, the Bat family gets to come in, right? A very clean-cut sense of justice, and yet even then, what does justice mean for a universe that no longer exists? We really tried to, we left it all on the table. It ends, it ends tragically, it ends beautifully. We are so proud of where it does come up. And ultimately, yes, we're shining a lot of light on some of the more cracked and broken corners of the DCU, but ultimately, we love that place.
I think it's also, really, really important to note this week of all weeks. So 2 days ago, John Cassaday passed away. And John is probably the single greatest artistic influence on my imagination that has ever lived. It's like him and Mike Mignola, man. Like it's like a two-state, two-person Mount Rushmore for me. I'm a little speechless at what that sort of was, to get to play in his sandbox, to get to play with his characters, to get to understand even a fraction of what it was like to create Planetary, or be able to operate with that kind of freedom and that kind of frontiersman-like behavior, where you're just carving forward into something that has, there's no net. You're taking risk after risk after risk after risk, and you have to hope that the quality of that is going to maintain. I hope we did him proud. I'm really honored that he came to do the cover for issue 1. I think it will devastate me forever that it was one of his last covers. I do think that Outsiders 11 acts as I hope, right? I'm less willing to be like, it's beautiful than Collin is. But I really hope that it is, that it operates as a bit of our own sort of creative eulogy for a person who meant a lot to us, and for an artist who meant a lot to us. And yeah, I think it's very strange for the book to be in that position. But it's like the book's already shipped, so it's like, it's not even like we got to go back and be like, okay, let's re-examine this. It's like, no, it's just, that's what this is. This is a book about how stories die and pass, and what they mean, and how they mean, and what they mean to the next generation, and how stories outlive their creators. That happens to coincide with a really devastating tragedy of a creator who meant a lot to us. So I hope that people who pick up Outsiders 11, or if you haven't read Outsiders and you are interested in reading something that's that sort of blends that line between fiction and reality a little bit stronger than maybe most of the stuff that DC does, that you'll take a look at what's going on in that book and check out issue 11, which is the grand finale, and I think is I am willing to say I'm very, very proud of how it sorted. So I hope people agree.
Absolutely beautifully said, and all the love to his family in this absolutely terrible time. And yeah. I think you guys absolutely nailed it throughout the series, even though we've talked about how I came into this completely fresh, completely new to all of this. You guys absolutely sold me. And the thing that I really love about it is how self-aware it is. Like you guys are talking about, you know, the place between pages, which I talked about on the show before, and what's currently going on with the snowflake and the universe, all that stuff. That it just is so good. It's so creative. We just talked about with necromancy, you know, creative, different storytelling. I think that's fully on display in this series, and I have no doubt that this last issue is going to just be phenomenal. Again, I cannot say how much of a fan I am of this book, and I also really want to shout out for last issue, issue 10. We have Robert Carey on art and Valentina Tadeo, I hope I'm saying that right, on colors, and absolutely phenomenal. I mean, we have some beautiful, like, jaw-dropping full page spreads in this issue that I had to go back like multiple times. Just absolutely killed it. It really accentuates the excitingness and like the kind of dire situation everybody's in. So I wanted to shout them out because absolutely incredible. Again, be sure by the time you guys see this video, Outsiders 11 will be coming out this Wednesday. So be sure to go pick that up. And also another great book that you guys are writing that kind of just started. We're only 2 issues in, so I only got one quick question on this. But Spider-Man, you guys are writing Peter Parker, not only Peter Parker, but Peter Parker in the black suit. And I think there's a lot of disagreements in the Spider-Man fandom about basically everything, but I think all of us.
I said the word Paul on the internet once. I know what that's like.
But I think we could all agree that the black suit is just like everyone loves the black suit.
It rips.
It absolutely rips. So how does it, I just want to ask this, how does it feel to write not only Peter Parker, but Peter Parker coming back into like a classic suit? I definitely feel like a classic vibe like to your Peter Parker. I'm not reading current Spider-Man, so I'm not going to, you know, talk about characterization in those, but it totally feels like Peter to me, like Saturday morning cartoon Peter. So again, just like, how does it feel to write a character so iconic?
I mean, but well, we can swear here.
Let it go, dude. Let it go.
It fucking rips. Like what? Like yes. I mean, you know, what young writer doesn't grow up wanting to write Batman? Of course. But Peter Parker is all of us and has always been all of us. Like, and as we have grown up, so has he. And it's like, we're adult men now. We're still funny, right? You don't need to lose that kind of whimsical, kind of a off the cuff joy just because you're getting older and the world sucks, right? And I think that's just been a really pleasurable, just a really awesome thing to bring to Peter, especially with the suit, who, yes, this obviously aesthetically it rips, but also just that ideology that Venom brings to him after Venom has also gone through this incredible journey. You know, they've both matured so much as beings.
Venom is an Al Ewing Ram V character now. He's a completely different character than he was even during the Donny Cates era. Like,
he's a hand at the end of time.
Yeah,
he's a guy. Like, everyone go check out Venom if you're not reading it. It's great. Venom War is going on right now, which is the tie-in that you guys are doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's Venom War Spider-Man. Just for anybody who's Spider-Man, we're not writing just like Spider-Man. Someday, but not now.
Someday.
Yeah, it's like, but it is ultimately like when your old childhood friend comes over, haven't seen each other for 30 years, but man, you two just fall right into that pattern, right? It's just like, oh man, we grew up like this, and yet at the same time, we've done so much growing that like, oh yeah, some of these jokes are not good anymore, right? Like you realize how much you've grown, even though you and this other person have really, really connected. You know, it's something that Jack and I obviously can speak to a lot. We share a brain in a lot of ways. I'm a little symbiote that lives on his shoulder.
Same.
Yeah. We're double symbiotes. But it's been a total blast. We'll write Peter Parker for fucking ever.
It's that part of it that Collin just spoke to. I think that's really the core of it for me is that we approached it with 2 things in mind. The first was Peter Parker's one of those voices that just he's in our heads. There's a few of those characters. Steve Rogers was one of those characters. Started writing Steve, and it was just like, well, we know this guy. Like, there's no question in our minds. He's just been living there rent-free for our whole lives, and I guess he just knows what's up. I guess his rent was like teaching us morals.
Yeah.
I was surprised Batman was kind of that way for me, especially Terry. I was surprised how much of that was just like, oh, this is very natural. Peter is like that too. Peter is just, he's a character who the first time we wrote him, I was very nervous. We wrote him in the Thor annual. And he only had like 3 pages, and it was like an alternate universe Peter Parker, and he just flew off the page. It was like, oh, we know exactly who this guy is. He's us, as Colin pointed out. We are very similar to Peter in a lot of ways. We believe in responsibility. We wield a certain degree of power. We try to find our way through our lives. We have wives and families and chaotic worlds around us that we're always trying to balance against a sort of overwhelming personal responsibility. He feels like the kind of character that we can like speak to very directly. But then at the same time, what's special about Colin and I is that we are a partnership. We call ourselves the hive mind. You know what Clintar is? A hive mind. So like, it was a really awesome opportunity for us to go back to the thing that started us writing together, which was we used to write about best friends a lot. We really love writing about generally two male characters who really respond, or male-coded characters who really respond to one another and have very close platonic relationships, because that's what Colin and I have developed in our lives. And so it's a lot like writing what we know. So from Hacktivist all the way through, we've looked for ways to build those kind of male friendships and those bonds, those like not romantic, but as close as that bonds that you encounter with like every once in a while with people. We wanted to bring that into the vibe and really make sure that Peter and Venom got their time for that. I think sometimes they kind of treat each other, or like they're treated in the thing like Venom was some big mistake or some parasite on Peter. And like after a fashion, that's true. But underneath it, they're friends. They're partners. They were actually like at it with each other for a while. And that has its own toxicity and those own problems. And what is Peter going through in the main Spider-Man book? Because we are reading ASM. What is he going through in that book except fundamental isolation and loss? He has lost so much, and he's lost Mary Jane. He's lost his sense of self. He's lost a lot of like the potential of what he was. He had like a mentee in Ms. Marvel and kind of lost that too. Like he's just losing stuff constantly. And I felt like this was a really incredible opportunity when Jordan White asked us, hey, do you want to come in and do a little Spider-Man? We said yes, obviously right away, but the biggest reason we said yes was that it was a great chance for us to write Peter and the Suit, write Venom and Spider-Man as partners and friends again, and see how far they've come and how far they still have to go. And then we got the great opportunity to then bring in that ASM status quo with Mary Jane, which is the biggest weakness in Peter's heart. That Mary Jane has moved on, that she has this other family, that she has this other premise, that she has this man in her life, all of that stuff now, and that he's part of her superhero identity as Jackpot, right? So now all of that gets to show up in front of Peter and Venom, who last time he saw Peter lived and died by Mary Jane. What the hell is going on? And he gets to speak to a lot of like the inherent frustration that Peter encounters in a way that normally Peter can't, because his responsibility tells him that, in fact, it's his responsibility not to destroy Mary Jane's life by admitting his feelings, not destroy what Mary Jane has by trying to get in the way of it. His responsibility has gone in front of his personal side. And Venom is selfish in that respect and can look at him and be like, why are you putting yourself last?
And selfish isn't always bad.
And that's the balance. It's suddenly like we started talking about it, it's like there's just a real conversation to be had here, and that seems like a really fun place to do it. And then in issue 3, you're gonna get Peter Parker King in Black, because we can't.
What? So let's go, baby. That's so awesome, and I love your approach. Again, going back to character first, and not only dissecting Peter, but Venom as a character, which I think a lot of people kind of, brush off, like you said, as like this parasite, just kind of a extension of Brock or Peter, not its own, full person thing, whatever you want to call it. So
Al's been amazing at centering that.
Yes. Yeah, I want to shout out again, Al Ewing's Venom run has been absolutely bonkers. Venom War has been absolutely awesome. You guys are adding some great tapestry to that. And I want to shout out to my co-host over at Sons of Mjolnir, Gorgon, the symbiote expert. I know that once she catches up, she's going to absolutely love all of this. And we got to talk about NYX, my dudes. X-Men are everywhere. It has been going gangbusters. We have had Uncanny X-Men, Jed McKay on the main X-Men title. We just had Exceptional X-Men last week, which absolutely was awesome. But NYX, I have talked about this book at exhaustion at this point. We talked about it in our last interview, our last conversation, where we kind of set everything up. That was before the first issue came out. So again, if you guys want to hear a little bit of the backstory of how the book came to be, go check that out. But this is going to be following Miss Marvel and a group of mutants in Manhattan. And basically the concept is what happens to the mutants that aren't superheroes after the fall of Krakoa? How do they pick up their lives? How do they move forward? And so first two issues are now out. First one heavily centers Kamala. Second one heavily centers Laura, aka Wolverine. And you guys talk about how their relationship kind of is very much the crux of this book. And you also say, you say that while we're also going to be moving perspectives between characters, similar to Necromancy. Yeah. So now that we have the first two issues out, again, we're introduced to this dynamic very early on. I would never ask you guys for spoilers. Don't want that. But as much as you can, I'm just wondering, could you unpack that a little bit more now that the first two are out and kind of just discuss how this relationship is going to be influencing everybody in this book? You guys have also akined it to like Superman and Batman, their dynamic with each other.
Yeah, I think so. Again, yeah, we'll be a little cagey because as I said, it does that the conversation of Laura's perspective on this and Kamala's perspective on this is very much the center of the book. But I think that what you're gonna see is that over the course of that first few issues, and you've already seen it already in some respects, that Kamala is out there trying to figure out what it means to be a mutant and a hero, because she's new to this and she's starting to understand that community. But in doing so, she's lying to her parents. She's stepping out at night in ways that she normally doesn't. She's acting different than Kamala normally does a little bit because she has this new world that's embracing her and letting her think of herself not as Kamala, but as Miss Marvel, sort of in like a full-time basis. And so that's allowing her that freedom that might also run up against her core, which is a responsibility to her family, who don't know she's a mutant and don't know she's Miss Marvel, right? They used to, they don't anymore. And so that really makes for like an interesting sort of setup on her side. On the flip side, you have Laura, a character who knows exactly what it means to be a mutant and codes being a mutant primarily in worlds of violence, in worlds of survival, in worlds of exploitation, she has seen all of the worst parts of this mutant lifestyle over the course of her life. She's even had a version of herself grow old and die, right? Like she has seen an enormous amount of her life sort of fall and get consumed by the tragedy of mutants. But she's also seen how mutants, when they stand together and when they hold each other up, Gabby, Logan, how that lifestyle can create some kind of freedom and safety, right? And so she sees herself as a dark protector, as somebody who can go out there and be that person, not now just for Gabby, but for everybody. For every mutant, every young mutant who needs her, she's going to be there to stab the guy coming at him and give them another chance at life, right? That struggle of, I want to be a part of this culture and I think it can be beautiful. And trust me, this culture, while it can be beautiful, at its core is violent, is this conversation that I think the two of them are going to constantly be having as we start to unpack what it means to be an X-Man. And then I think what's exciting is how that starts to extend to the rest of the cast as we get through the rest of the book.
Because really every issue, as you do point out, every issue is going to be kind of focusing on a different member of our cast. But that push and pull, the way that Laura and Kamala's perspectives clash with each other is effectively what everybody is going to be wrestling with. It's just that everybody, as we kind of dive into where they are emotionally, intellectually, are going to have a different perspective and a different answer, which will all kind of come dovetailing together in the secrets of what is simmering underneath the surface. I guess something which you have seen if you have read NYX #2 is the reintroduction of one of the X-Men's most notorious villains. And what he has started here, he is nowhere near finished.
That, for anybody who's wondering, is Mojo. we really early on decided that we wanted to take 3 very different perspectives on villainy in this book because it wasn't going to be a traditional superhero book. This book is for fans of young X-Men or young Avengers and Runaways and more like character-centric indie comics. Like that's really what this book is designed to do. It's we're putting the superhero soap opera, we're putting superhero into like 6-point font and soap opera into like 20-point font, right? Like that's really the objective of this, was to take the character stuff and really drive that. This is a television show. This is
Phonogram.
Yeah, this is Mutant Phonogram. This is local. This is like, that's what we're doing here. And so the hope is, as you develop out that thing, you get to have very different perspectives on what villainy is. On the one hand, now you've met all 3 villains. You've met the Truth Seekers, who are basically just humans with social media accounts who are hunting down mutants and making life hard for them, which is that's just real world villainy. That's just what people do on the internet. Then you have your sort of mid-level villains, which are your mutants who learned the lesson of Krakoa, maybe a little bit differently than our heroes did, and are looking at the lesson of Krakoa as, well, you know, we built a place to be safe and protect ourselves, and they tore it away from us and tore it down. So we're going to take their world because they took ours. So why wouldn't we do this, right? And I think that there's a certain argument to what they're doing that's not entirely wrong.
Yeah, a lot of the fans are actually like, this is the one that makes sense.
And they're not, and good. They should be. That should be the question. And that's why we put Empath in the center of it, because at the very least you can know, well, as long as Empath's involved, it's probably not all right. And then to really then to turn that dial all the way up to 11, right? You have like the sort of like 0 level grounded version. You have the 5, which is the Quiet Council. And then at 11, you have Mojo, a reality warping parasite who sees a great opportunity to come in and be the new center of mutant culture. He's appropriating. He's not trying to take it. He's not trying to use it from the inside or trying to destroy it from the outside. He's trying to take it in and turn it into power for himself. And I think that those 3 things, those are the counter arguments to Laura and Miss Marvel, right? If you grid that, you want to put that on a little story map, that's the book. But then how Anole and Prodigy and Sophie and characters to come, who I will not tell you about today, are going to affect that and become part and parcel to those fights and to that struggle, is going to be that's the real fabric of the book. And over the course of our, we've been sort of upfront about like we planned for like 10 to 15 issues. We're definitely doing at least 10. The goal for us is to take all 3 of those battles, Truth Seekers, Quiet Council, Mojo, and not necessarily in that order, address them all 3 alongside this thing, without it basically coming down to a bunch of people in superhero costumes punching a bunch of people in supervillain costumes, and trying for something a little bit different in terms of like the conflict resolution on this book. So for something a little bit different, where I know we're in sort of like a 90s like refresh era on X-Men, and I think that's awesome. We're loving all these books. They're banger after banger. We're definitely playing a sort of like minor key character orient on our side. But I think that the fans, we're hearing from a lot of people that it's one of their favorite books on the line. And I think that's because it gets to play that counter beat. It's there for you when you're done with all of the big bombastic superhero stuff and you want to dig into something that's going to make you feel, really going to try to make you feel something really closer to your normal actual life, but using the X-Men as a frame.
I mean, we all love the X-Men whooping on Magneto's ass, but we die for playing baseball.
Which incidentally is why the 3 core books are so good right now, is that they do all balance that really lovely. Like Jed's book balances it a certain way. Gail's book balances it a certain way. Eve's book balances it. Eve's book is just all baseball. There's no supervillains.
But what we want to do is, it's the youth. Yes, you might have to go kick some ass, but afterwards you're going to go to the club and you're going to go dancing with your friends.
Yeah.
And that's really the humanism that we're going to be trying to bring to it. Issue 3 is incredibly important to us. If any of that has sounded at all interesting to y'all out there, please go pick up issue 3. It's the third. It's just a hugely important issue, just not in terms of the book, but in terms of a statement on Krakoa, a statement on mutantdom. We are going to be visiting the Morlocks, and seeing how the Morlocks have kind of evolved and developed in this post-Krakoan diaspora.
Which is a huge part of the X-Men puzzle that people in the new from the Ashes era have not yet seen. So if you want to know what's up with the Morlocks, you really should jump on board NYX3, because you're going to see a lot of your old faves and some new characters that are, you know, going to be really opening up a whole different part of the context in this book.
Come on, people. What more do you need? I mean, it's everything you guys are talking about. It just really comes through, even just in these 2 issues. Totally hits that kind of Runaways, Young Avengers vibe. And I personally have been loving, like you guys said, the entire new X line from the Ashes. Me and my other co-host Damon on this show, we have kind of differing opinions on it, with the very much return to form for a lot of these titles, which I love. But NYX stands out among that, and that's like what interests my co-host Damon, and I think that's what really makes this book really shine. And like you said, the whole kind of teenage TV soap opera, it feels X-Men in like every sense of the word. And so everyone, be sure to go pick up issue 3. That's coming out next. I think if you're watching this right now, it should be coming out this week. So run to your comic shops, grab that, grab Principles of Necromancy trade, also grab Outsiders last issue.
And by the way, I was wrong about that trade. That trade is absolutely an FOC. Collin was completely correct, and I was completely wrong. So please go to your local shop, tell them you want that Principles of Necromancy trade. Let's get it out there.
Yes, people, tell your comic shop, go support your local comic shops. And again, if you see Jackson, Lanzing, Collin Kelly on a book, you should pick it up, because it is most likely going to be absolutely fantastic. I cannot thank you guys enough for taking time out of your busy schedules to come talk to me today. You guys are writing so much stuff. We didn't even get to talk about it all. We also got Star Trek, which just celebrated 500 issues last week, and you guys are absolutely killing it over there. So next time we're going to have to go very deep into Star Trek.
Let's do it. We got a big event coming next year called Lore War. Get psyched. It's like Secret Wars for Star Trek. It's going to be awesome, dude. Check it out.
Yes, and that's a perfect segue. Throw it off to you guys. I know you guys have a new social handle for the people to follow, and I know there's a lot of hush-hush, but what you can tell us, what we got coming down the pipeline.
Sure. Well, so you can find us easily at HiveMind Actual. That's just one word, HiveMind Actual, on all social platforms. Any social platform, wherever you are, we're there. So go check us out there. If you want to find our personal stuff, I'm at Jackson Lanzing. Collin is at CP Kelly. And on Twitter. So please come find us, say hi, and check out what we're doing. We'll always post about the next thing. In terms of what's coming up next, it's all secrets. There's some really cool stuff coming up. I can't wait for people to see it. We have some other books with a certain letter that we've been talking about a lot today that might be really fun for people next year. But people, fans who've been following our work on Sentinel of Liberty with Bucky Barnes and over into Thunderbolts, we've got some new stuff coming up in that frame pretty soon from Marvel. And then we have a big thing that we've been working on for like almost a year at Marvel now that I think is going to take a lot of people by surprise. It's very different. It's very wild. It's a big swing. So as I said, we're kind of taking a break from DC for a little bit, and we're going all in on Marvel, honestly, right now, because there's an enormous amount of really exciting opportunities there kind of open themselves up to us simultaneously. So there's going to be a lot more where NYX came from over the course of the next few months. So people should check that out. Keep an eye out on Principles. Go grab With Wolf if you haven't checked it out. And then, Star Trek. We're leading up to a huge thing next year called Lore War. If you've been sleeping on the Star Trek series and you have any interest in Star Trek at all, I would go back and just start from that first trade that just came out. We just got the paperback out this week, or next week, I think, of Godshock. Go pick it up. Get started on Star Trek. There's a whole, Eisner-nominated line of comics ready for you when you're ready. And then we're heading towards a gigantic event next year that I really think is going to blow people back. So get psyched. Thank you so much for having us.
Do it, nerds. I'm taking receipts. I'm checking everyone's receipts out of the comic shop. So be sure to pick up all those titles. Pick up Batman Beyond, Captain America, and everything these guys do is fantastic. If you guys liked this episode, please consider giving us a like and subscribe. It really helps us out. And also go follow us on all of our socials. Agents Fandom on Twitter and TikTok. Agents of Fandom pretty much everywhere else. You can also find us at the Comic Corner Pod on Twitter. And that's going to be all we have for you. We will see you guys all next time.